Welcome to today. Welcome to today's special seminar for lecturers and administrative staff at UWI on how to relate to persons with disabilities. I am your chairperson for today, Chevelle Gerson Robinson, and it is a pleasure to host the members of the UWI Mona Western Jamaica campus. In true Jamaican fashion, we would like to open with a word of prayer. Most righteous and eternal Father, I want to thank you for the opportunity to meet in this forum today to discuss matters relating to persons with disabilities. We would like to ask that the words and presentations that's delivered today be glorified and honorable to you, and that the knowledge is well received by all participants. All these things we ask in your Son's name. Amen. So the next item on the agenda, today we'll have welcome and opening remarks being delivered by Dr. Patrick Prendergast, Director of the UWI Mona Western Jamaica campus.
Thank you, Chevelle. Good morning, colleagues. Just to say welcome and thank you for joining this very important, timely, I would dare say, necessary conversation about inclusivity as it relates to disabilities in our society, broadly speaking, but more specifically, the university community. This is a workshop that is long in coming. So I want to thank the UWI Center for Disability Studies first for pulling together a respectable team of presenters for this workshop series. And secondly, for the incredible work you have been doing to advance the disabilities agenda in the wider society. And finally, for your fantastic and inspiring leadership across the University of the West Indies Mona campus. Thank you really for bringing the entire community to the table. You know, Stephen Hawking, the world-renowned physicist who was diagnosed with ALS for 50 years, said, "My advice to other disabled people would be concentrate on things your disability doesn't prevent you doing well, and don't regret the things it interferes with." This, I believe, is the experience of the disabled community at the university, charting pathways of success in their unique ways with their own unique skill set, doing what they can do well and taking every opportunity to have others experience that journey with them. I met Dr. Floyd Morris almost, he's probably going to kill for this, 30 years ago, when he was a first-year student, I believe, at Carmack in a course called Communication, Culture, and Caribbean Society. It was a thought leadership course for most of us. And more than anything else, for me, though, it was a space in which we were able to affirm the nexus between thought and action in the change process. Floyd was a trailblazer from then, setting the pace for the disabled to not only see the possibilities of pursuing higher education at the university, but ensuring that as a community, they were understood, appreciated, and planned for. And yes, I said planned for. The truth is, Floyd has always been a champion for the differently abled, not just because of his own blindness, but because of his innate desire to better the human condition, which I had come to learn from those early interactions he had developed before losing his sight. You know, a true change agent that I was really very happy to engage with. Now, here he is, the leading charge as director at the UWI Center for Disability Studies at Mona, and making sure that that success story of our disabled community these stories are forever etched in our own evolution as a forward-thinking and transformational academic space. Stories like that of Dana Gayweather, who was diagnosed with muscular dystrophy, age 3. This is a genetic disorder that progressively weakens and results in the loss of muscle mass over time. And actually, she was given only until age 8 to live. Now, as she says, through the help of volunteers and the supportive Center for Disability Studies, Dana is a proud graduate with a BSc in psychology and engaged as a motivational speaker and a member of the Jamaica Paralympic Association. Dana and others like her who have come up through the UWI system underscore what neurologist and best-selling author Oliver Sacks is credited with saying, "I wish for a world that views disability, mental or physical, not as a hindrance, but as unique attributes that can be seen as powerful assets if given the right opportunities. Yes, disabled persons need opportunities to achieve greatness, and we should be mindful to give them that space and environment to achieve their goals. But today we will also appreciate that if we are going to be consciously and intentionally creating opportunities and the supportive environment for the disabled to meet their success goals, the success goals that we all want to see, it is even more important to deepen and widen our understanding about what is truly a multifaceted and dynamic world of disabilities. So I guarantee you that this workshop will have us raising a lot of questions and ideas about our own readiness as individuals and certainly as an institution. And I bet we will conclude that there is work to be done, lots. So I'm not going to raise the efforts we have made at UWI Mona Western Jamaica campus over the years, but rather to say to all of us and the UWI Center for Disability Studies, we at UWI Mona WJC must remain committed to promoting a better understanding of disabilities. We have no choice now but to strengthen our effort at creating the environment and opportunities for a positive experience on this campus. And as I said at the start, this workshop series being done by the UWI Center for Disability Studies is absolutely critical. And we're very happy to have you engage in this special way with the team in Montego Bay. So welcome and thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Prendergast, for that lovely welcome and opening remarks. It's well appreciated. So we'll move into the overview. We will move into the overview of the seminar. On February 14, 2022, the government of Jamaica brought into effect the long-past Disabilities Act of Jamaica. This legislation was approved in Parliament in 2014. The legislation seeks to protect persons with disabilities in the island against all forms of discriminations and to allow for their meaningful participation and inclusion in society on an equal basis with others. For clarity, persons with disabilities are regarded as any individual who, with a long-term physical, mental, intellectual, or sensory impairment which may hinder their full and effective participation in society on an equal basis with other persons. There are 8 major categories of disabilities: blindness or visual impairment, deafness or hard of hearing, physical, mental, intellectual, speech, learning, and neurological. All of these disabilities impact on the functionality of the individuals with these types of impairments. The Disabilities Act of Jamaica makes it mandatory for education and training institutions to put in place measures to facilitate the participation, inclusion, and non-discrimination against persons with disabilities. Section 26 of the Act speaks to this. The University of the West Indies is the premier education institution in Jamaica, and as such, it must continue to lead by example. In this context, it must ensure that it continues to build on the foundation that it has laid over the past 30 years to facilitate the participation, inclusion, and non-discrimination against persons with disabilities. Over the past 30 years, the UWI has put in place varied measures to reasonably accommodate persons with disabilities, starting with the establishment of the Committee for Students with Disabilities in 1991. The institution has become the leading academic institution in terms of care and support for students with disabilities. This is evidenced by the creation of the Office for Special Student Services that caters to the needs of students with disabilities. The establishment of a facility equipped with modern technologies to assist students with disabilities in their learning experience, a large cadre of volunteers to assist students with disabilities, and a special examination accommodation for students with disabilities. Additionally, The UE has been progressively improving access to the physical plan to ensure that individuals with physical disabilities can have greater access. Notwithstanding these efforts by the UWI Mona, significant work needs to be done to ensure that the institution is a fully inclusive educational space. One area that needs urgent attention is that of the attitude of the members of staff towards persons with disabilities. Members of staff are social creatures and would have been exposed to negative orientation towards persons with disabilities. This instant response is to be pitiful of persons with disabilities. This is an approach that is associated with the charity or medical model of disability. But we are now operating in an era of the social and rights-based model of disability. Resiliently, there must be a systematic shift in the institution in how persons with disabilities are treated and related to. Thus, the Center for Disability Study, the entity established at the UWI Mona to drive research, training, public education, and advocacy, is conducting these seminars in how to relate to students and staff with disability in a modern context. The Disabilities Act is now in effect. All education and training institutions are required to implement measures which will redound to the participation, inclusion, and non-discrimination of persons with disability. Being the premier academic institution in Jamaica and the institution that has proactively put in place measures to accommodate persons with disability, additional measures must be formulated to make UWI Mona more inclusive and participatory for students and employees with disabilities. It is for this reason the UWICDS is conducting these training seminars to sensitize administrative staff and lecturers in how to relate to students and staff with disabilities. Please enjoy and appreciate the information that is being prepared by a distinguished panel which has tremendous knowledge of persons with disabilities. So we will be moving into our first presentation today by Senator Dr. Floyd Morris. Senator Dr. Morris is an outstanding and distinguished member of the community of persons with disabilities in Jamaica. He is a member of the United Nations Committee on the Rights of Persons with Disability and is the current director of the UWI Center for Disability Studies. Senator Dr. Morris will present on the Disabilities Act 2014 and the education, training, and employment of persons with disability. Dr. Morris, the floor is yours.
Okay, you're hearing me?
Yes,
Loud
sir.
and clear.
Okay, thank you very much. Pleasant good morning to all the participants and especially to the director of the UWI Mona Western Jamaica campus, my friend who has his maths totally incorrect because he said we met 30 years ago, but that couldn't be correct because I am just 30. So I guess he has to check his maths. I know we met a couple of years ago, but I'm still stuck at 30. A pleasant good morning to all the participants from Western Jamaica campus in particular who have joined. And this morning's or today's training is specifically geared to you because we have started on Tuesday with the Faculty of Social Sciences at Mona, then the general Mona campus, and now we are at this training session with the Western Jamaica campus. Let me take this opportunity to welcome all the participants to this special seminar designed to give greater insights on the legislation that has been formulated to protect the rights and dignity of persons with disabilities in Jamaica. This legislation was enacted in 2014, having gone through a long process of consultation starting from 2004, when I was Minister of State in the Ministry of Labor and Social Security. I was extremely committed then, as I am now, to ensuring that persons with disabilities are included, allowed to participate, and not discriminated against in the Jamaican society. This legislation will do all of this, and you are the ones who have to ensure that these goals are realized and persons with disabilities receive the benefits. The legislation is anchored in the human rights model of disability. Persons with disabilities under this model are viewed as rights holders and are therefore subject to all the fundamental rights and freedoms entrenched in diverse international human rights treaties. The United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities that was signed and ratified by Jamaica in 2007 is the gold standard for this human rights model and is a feature of the Disabilities Act 2014. The objects of the Act are A, reinforce and promote recognition and acceptance within Jamaica of the principle that a person with a disability has the same fundamental rights as any other person in Jamaica. B, promote individual dignity and individual autonomy, including the freedom of choice and the independence of a person with a disability. C, ensure full and effective participation and inclusion in the society for persons with disabilities on an equal basis with others. D, prevent or prohibit discrimination against a person with a disability. And E, promote respect for differences and acceptance of persons with disabilities as part of human diversity and humanity. The legislation carries 11 parts and 51 sections. For the purpose of this presentation, we will not go through every single section. However, we will delve into the most essential features of the Act to show how it will benefit persons with disabilities. So, join with me for the next few minutes as I delineate the salient aspects of the legislation. We will finalize on some question and answers on how this legislation will transform and empower persons with disabilities through education and training. Section 2 of the Act deals with the interpretation. This section gives the definition of the diverse terms and concepts used in the Act. For the purpose of this presentation, I will focus on the definition for discrimination, persons with disabilities, and reasonable accommodation. Discrimination means any distinction, exclusion, or restriction on the basis of disability which has the purpose or effect of impairing or nullifying the recognition, enjoyment, or exercise on an equal basis with others of privileges, legal interests, rights, benefits, and treatment in the political, economic, social, cultural, civil, religious, education, or any other field, and include all forms of discrimination, including denial of reasonable arrangements. And my friend and colleague at the UN, Dr. Samuel Kabui, will elaborate on the concept of reasonable accommodation later. Persons with disabilities, or where the context requires, person with a disability includes a person who has a long-term physical, mental, intellectual, or sensory impairment which may hinder his or I would say his or her, because the language of the law says his. So it's his or her full and effective participation in society on an equal basis with other persons. Reasonable arrangement means the necessary and appropriate modification and adjustment, not imposing a disproportionate or undue burden where needed in a particular case to ensure to a person with a disability the enjoyment or exercise on an equal basis with others of privileges, interests, benefits, and treatment, and the facilitation of such privileges, interests, benefits, and treatment by the provision of auxiliary aids and services, including A, equipment or devices that alleviate the effects of a disability being experienced by a person. B, the acquisition or modification of such equipment or devices. C, duly qualified interpreters, technologies, and effective methods of making orally delivered and received materials available to a person with a disability. And D, duly qualified readers, taped audio, visual, recorded text, or other effective methods of making visually delivered materials available to a person with a disability. It is extremely important that we learn and understand the terms and concepts. We have to be able to relate to them on a daily basis, and therefore, knowledge of them is foundational. Part 2 of the Act deals with the Jamaica Council for Persons with Disabilities. Section 5 establishes the JCPD as a body corporate. What this means is that the organization will function as a statutory entity with its own seal. It will have the right to hire staff as it sees fit and to govern its proceedings. Importantly, it will have command over its own budget, and therefore services offered by the new entity should be more efficient. Currently, it takes over a year to get some benefits from the existing JCPD. This is because they have to go through the Ministry of Labor and Social Security to get things done. But under the new regime, this will change. And once the resources are available, then persons with disabilities should be able to get benefits quicker. Section 9 of the Act gives the authority of the Council to formulate codes of practice for the prevention of discrimination against persons with disabilities. It states the Council shall A, prepare codes of practice for guidance on matters under this Act, and B, review those codes of practice and, where appropriate, make alterations thereto. And each such code of practice shall be laid on the table of each House of Parliament. Part 3 of the Act deals with the Disability Rights Tribunal. Specifically, Section 15 of the Act establishes the tribunal, which is called the Disability Rights Tribunal. This is a tribunal that will have the right to hear matters relating to the discrimination of persons with disabilities in Jamaica. Its constitution is set out in the 3rd schedule. The minister with responsibility for persons with disabilities has the authority to appoint the members of this tribunal, subject to the provisions set out in the Act. Section 16 gives the authority to a person with a disability to lodge a complaint to the JCPD if there is a perceived violation of the rights of an individual with a disability. This can be done no later than 2 years after the occurrence of the violation. It must be noted that the complaint must be taken to the council for investigation to be done. The legislation requires that the JCPD must take action with regards to any complaint that is brought to it by a person with a disability or caregiver. Section 18(2) speaks to this. It states, the council shall, with respect to a complaint made under Section 16(a), refer the complaint to the tribunal for determination, or B, with the consent of the parties named in the complaint, refer the complaint for alternate dispute resolution. So the matter can be referred directly to the Disability Rights Tribunal, or subject to agreement with the parties involved, reference to alternate dispute resolution. A person with a disability can bring a matter to the court based on a decision made by the Disability Rights Tribunal. In this regard, the JCPD may give support to the person with disability as outlined in Section 22 of the Act. Part 4 of the Act deals with discrimination against persons with disabilities. Section 25 expressly states, a person with a disability shall not, by reason of such disability, be subject to any form of discrimination. Part 5 of the Act, which covers Section 26 to 28, deals with the situation of education. Among other things, the Act frowns upon any practice of discrimination against persons with disabilities in education. Section 26 states, 1, an education or training institution shall not deny a person with a disability from being enrolled at or attending the institution by reason of their disability. And Section 2 of subsection 2 states, an education or training institution shall provide the support necessary to ensure that in relation to the institution, a person with a disability, A, has the most reasonable access to the education or training provided, B, has access to facilities in the least restrictive environment and best suited to his individual needs, C, being a student of the institution, is not, in relation to student services provided, placed at a disadvantage, and D, is provided with reasonable arrangements and receives the support required to effectively facilitate his education. And then we go on to 3, and it says, Each caregiver as far as practical, must monitor the circumstances of a person with a disability in their care in order to ensure that the person with a disability is not subject to discrimination, and where necessary, file a complaint with the council in relation to a person with a disability subject to discrimination in the provision of education and training. And then subsection 3 says that an education or training institution shall have regard to the provision of any applicable code of practice issued by the council under section 9 and take reasonable steps to comply therewith. Subsection 4 says for the purpose of this section, education or training institution means a private institution or a public institution which is engaged in the imparting of knowledge or skill to any individual. So this legislation is applicable to both private and public institutions. Part 6 of the Act, which covers section 29 to 31, deals with the issue of employment of persons with disabilities. The law frowns upon discrimination against persons with disabilities as manifested in sections 29 and 30. Section 31 is most significant in light of practices in the labor market. It deals with the situation of an employee developing a disability on the job and how it should be treated. It states, where an employee has become disabled, whether by virtue of his employment or otherwise, and that employee is no longer capable of executing the task required by his contract of employment, insofar as there is no disproportionate or undue burden, the employer shall redeploy the employee to a position that A, is commensurate with the current skills and ability of the employee, B, does not result in loss in remuneration and benefits to the employee. And then we go on to part 11 of the Act that deals with miscellaneous issues relating to the Act. This part of the Act ranges from sections 41 to 51. There are some sections that are of extreme importance to this seminar. Section 43 is one of them. Section 43 deals with circumstances where individuals are providing a service, but it is proving to be difficult to formulate reasonable arrangement. In this regard, the Act makes provision for the government to assist in as far as practicable. Section 43 states, where a person is able to demonstrate to the satisfaction of any court or tribunal that the provision of services to or in relation to a person with a disability, which, but for the provision of this section, would be required under this Act, would constitute a disproportionate or undue burden, the government shall facilitate as far as is practicable the needs of the person with a disability. The Act makes provision for penalties to be imposed against individuals who obstruct an authorized person or falsifies information to the council. Section 44 of the Act speaks to this situation. It states a person who assaults or obstructs an authorized person acting in the performance of his lawful function under this act, or B, knowingly gives false or misleading information to the council or any authorized person acting in the performance of his function pursuant to this act, commits an offense and is liable on summary conviction before the resident magistrate to a fine not exceeding $1 million or to imprisonment for a term not exceeding 6 months or to both such fine and imprisonment. Similarly, the Act makes provision for penalties to be imposed on body corporates that violate any section of the Act. Section 45 of the Act deals with this. It states a body corporate that commits an offense against this Act is liable on summary conviction before a resident magistrate court to a fine not exceeding $1 million. 2, every director, manager, secretary, or other similar officer concerned with the offenses is liable on summary conviction before a resident magistrate to a fine not exceeding $500,000 or to imprisonment for a term not exceeding 6 months or to both such fine and imprisonment. Subsection 3 states that a director, manager, secretary, or other similar officer concerned with the management of the body corporate shall not be liable for an offense against this act unless the court is satisfied that the offense was committed with his consent or connivance. And so we move on to, we're coming down now. The Act in Section 46 makes provision for the minister to make regulations to give effect to the various provisions of the Act. These regulations must be affirmed by the Houses of Parliament. These regulations were tabled and adopted by the Parliament in 2021. Finally, the Act makes provision for a joint select committee of both Houses of Parliament to review its provision 3 years after coming into effect. So this review would be due in 2025, notwithstanding its passage in 2014. I just want to mention something that I skipped over in the presentation, and that is the codes of practice, which are developed to act as a guide in preventing discrimination against persons with disabilities. I have pointed out, and Ms. Gerson in her overview pointed out that for years, centuries, public policy has been fashioned under the aegis of the charity and medical models of disability with viewed persons with disabilities as objects of charity. And now we are operating in a social model rights-based approach era. And that views persons with disabilities as rights holders. And so what we have to do is to present some guidance to individuals in the society, recognizing the years of negative socialization against persons with disabilities, to provide some guidance as to how to relate to these individuals and not to engage in any discriminatory practices. So these codes of practices have been developed thus far, 3 of them thus far, the one on education, healthcare, and employment. to assist in guiding individuals in the public space on preventing discrimination. And the codes will be adopted by the board and then tabled in the parliament. And they would be very useful in preventing discrimination against persons with disabilities. I now make myself available for any question from the distinguished audience.
Thank you, if I may. Thank you very much, Dr. Morris. I'm happy that you actually revisited the discussion about, you know, the medical model / charity ways of looking at disabilities versus the social rights-based approach, because I think it's very important for us. I don't know, are you hearing me?
Yeah, man, I'm hearing you. I'm
Okay,
hearing
good.
you.
Because I think it's very important for us to understand that distinction. So as we move forward, and to have a better appreciation for, you know, the attitudes that actually come from understanding the differences between those kinds of approaches. I have noise in my background, so I'll just say that I'm really very happy that you have returned to that part of the conversation.
Yes, thank you very much for that observation. Now we're hearing you loud and clear. You know, it's a for us to understand persons with disabilities, we have to understand the different models of disability that has aided in shaping and formulating public policy, programs and policies and legislation over the years. And certainly, I would say prior to 1980, the global view or dominant view of looking at persons with disability was that of the charity and the medical models. And by the mid-1980s, we saw the introduction of what we call the social model of disability, which is saying that it is not the individual with the impairment is the problem. It is really the society with the various barriers that it has established, that has contributed to the restriction and isolation of persons with disabilities in society. And that triggered a new epoch of how persons with disabilities were viewed, and it led to various global documentations, for example, the standard rules. But when the standard rule was formulated, it was not binding in international law. And by 2006, the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities was adopted by the United Nations, which is a rights-based social model design global treaty, which emphasizes the rights of persons with disabilities and establishes an empowerment trajectory for these individuals. And that's a fundamental departure from the charity/medical model, which just view persons with disabilities in a negative light as individuals who have no meaningful contribution to make to society if you can cure the disease that contribute to their impairment.
Thank you. Just one quick, oh Lord, one quick other comment. I think understanding that is, yes, important as well, but it also forces us to come to terms with our own society's approach to rights as constitutional rights and fundamental rights. And if we're going to, and I think as an educational institution, and certain people working within an educational space, this is also giving us an opportunity to go back and have and develop an appreciation for the fundamental rights, especially the right to education, regardless of your station in life, the way I love to put it, or your social status, or your whatever your background, really, whether you're able or disabled or differently abled, that, you know, we all have a fundamental right to education.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that is also entrenched in the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, which Jamaica is a signatory to and is a feature of our own domestic legislation.
Thank you.
Dr. Prendergast, thank you so much for your questions. I'm not seeing any additional questions. The questions can be posted in the chat, as well as you can raise your hand to be acknowledged, and Dr. Morris, who is more than competent, will do his best to answer. All right, I'm seeing Miss Sandra Stubbs. Miss Stubbs, you may go ahead.
Thank you. My machine is giving a bit of trouble. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Here.
Okay. So thank you for the discussions and information, you know, to remind us about the rights and the dignities that are to be preserved for persons who are differently abled. Looking at it from a more operational point of view, and I should say that, Senator, I am in the library and was there in the earlier days when we started getting the Kurzweil software and the different document readers. But I heard you mention...
You remember that? You remember
yes. I heard you mention the whole reasonableness of taking care of our differently abled persons. And at a point, if we can't manage to do what is necessary to help the persons involved, then there is an opportunity for the government to assist. And I wondered about that procedure. For instance, if in my private educational institution, I can't afford the kind of ramps and so on that would be needed. Can I get help from the government? At what level, at what point do we say, okay, government, help us? What is reasonable on our part before we can get some help from the government? I wasn't clear on that.
Okay, well, thanks for reminding me about the Kurzweil machine. That was one of the first piece of sophisticated equipment that UWI got to assist blind and visually impaired students. I tell you, if you look at the section of the law, the matter would have to be determined by the court, and the court make a directive. If, for example, say somebody at your education institution should take you to the court, and you say that, boy, you can't afford it, then the court would look at the circumstances and they make a request of the government to assist. Apart from that, if you are doing work on your facility and you have some of the money, because I'm certain that the JCPD wouldn't be taking on all of a private individuals' construction. If you should approach them you know, and the resources are available, they would be able to give some support, because that is something that the law anticipates, that the government would give some support to the individuals. So two approaches can be adopted. Either you make a direct approach to the JCPD, or if when the matter goes to court, a complaint, and you know, the court will make a determination on whether the government should step in and assist if you say that you can't give the support. And the final thing that I want to just mention, and I just want to mention it gracefully, you know, because you said it in your presentation, in your question about differently able. The latest language guide from the UN, based on consultation with the community of persons with disabilities globally, frowns upon the use of such nomenclatures, because, you know, the standard reference should be persons with disabilities or people with disabilities.
Thanks for that. So it's persons with disability referred to disabled as well? Persons with disability?
It's persons with disabilities or people with disabilities.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks for that. Because
I've sent Francesca, I've sent you an email with the latest language guide from the UN. I would be grateful if I could circulate it to all the members who have participated in the seminar from Monday until now.
Yes.
Morning, colleagues. I received it, Dr. Morris. We'll send it out after.
Okay, thanks much.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
yes, because that's part of respecting the dignity of persons with disabilities, that we get the nomenclature right.
Yeah.
So, and I'm beginning to understand from your response that part of the assistance that we might seek will be triggered by a complaint from a person with disability if they're not being able to access. However, that also says that the persons with disability would also need to know their rights, so to speak, and you know what is reasonable to expect when they say come to WJC. Yes. So we all need to be on the same page. Yes. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, any additional comments, questions, feedback from the participants? All right. So with no further questions, comments, or feedback, we will move into our next presentation by Dr. Samuel Kabu. Dr. Kabu, are you on the call? Dr. Samuels? All right, so I'm not seeing Dr. Samuels, so we will have to do a little rearranging. And I will call upon Mrs. Shamali Cardoza Camarero to do her presentation next. Mrs. Camarero, are you online? Hi, Shamali. All right. So Mrs. Shamali Cardoza Camarera is an outstanding member of the community of persons with disabilities in Jamaica. She currently serves as the administrator at the Office of Special Student Services. She has occupied this position for close to 8 years. She will be presenting on the services that are available at UWI Mona for students with disabilities.
Ms. Gerson, just 1 minute, because Dr. Akabui was supposed to present at 11:05. So our session here is ending a bit early. So do you want us to, do you want me to send him an email quickly and see if he would come on now?
Sure.
Because he's all the way in Kenya.
All right, no problem. Participants, apologies for the minor inconvenience. We will try to reach out to him, and so let us break for a brief 5 minutes in an effort to get Dr. Samuel Kabu on the line. Ms. Cardoza, please stay on standby in the event of. Thank you. Mrs. Camera, I've stopped screen share to allow you to share screen.
Okay, thank you. Are you seeing my screen?
Confirmed.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. All protocol observe. Thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule to meet with us, to be sensitized about the services being provided on the UWI Mona campus. I am Shamali Cardoza Camara, the administrative assistant at the Office for Special Student Services. And today I will be informing you of the services being provided at the UWI Mona campus. So we'll start with a little background on how the office came about. So the Office for Special Student Services came about due to the advocacy, hard work, and persistence of individuals on the university campus. These individuals saw the need to ensure that students with disabilities receive the highest level of accommodations to maximize their true potential. Individuals such as Professor Mark Figueroa and Dr. Michael Witter, along with many other pioneers, realized that students with special needs were receiving acceptance to the University of the West Indies, and little was done to accommodate them, except for examination accommodation. Out of their hard work and advocacy came the Committee for Students with Special Needs. This committee was developed in the early 1990s and saw individuals from different departments on campus being a part of this committee. This committee drove the work so that students with special needs have the Office for Special Student Services, which is now located on the UWI Mona campus, a wonderful facility that caters to the needs of students with special needs. Who are we? The Office for Special Student Services is a unit that operates out of the Office of Student Services and Development. The Office for Special Student Services caters to the needs of students with special needs, to students with disabilities that are registered on the UWI campus. We cater to students with permanent disabilities such as blind and visually impaired, different learning challenges, physical, deaf, and hard of hearing. We go further to cater to students with temporary disabilities, such as injury to limb, students who are experiencing medical situations such as pink eye, chickenpox, individuals who are heavily pregnant, and persons who have anxiety issues. We cater to these students with temporary special needs, especially during the heat of the examination period. And I stop here to encourage you to inform your students of these services, because especially for students who might have one course or a few courses to complete, or who might have experienced an injury during the examination period and feels like they can't complete their exam. The services are there to assist these students to complete their exams in a more comfortable space with less distraction, and in some cases, based on their medical condition, be given additional time to complete their exams. Registration. When a student receives his or her acceptance, well, when a student applies to the University of the West Indies, there is a section which asks the student to indicate if they have a disability. Once the student receives his or her acceptance, this list is generated and sent to the Office for Special Student Services. We reach out to these students to inform them of the services we provide, and once they are, this is a decision that the student will have to make to decide if they would like to receive special accommodation. Because remember, we encourage students to register with our office, but it is their duty to declare if they have a special need. Once they declare that they have a special need, they are encouraged to submit, they must submit a medical report from a specialist. This medical report is sent to the health center for final approval by the director of the health center. Once the special students office receive this approval, we meet with the student on a one-on-one to discuss the special accommodation that is best suited to his or her need. And I say to his or her need because even though we have general accommodations that we provide, sometimes based on their medical report, we might have to tailor the accommodation to suit the specific need. For example, a person who is deaf might not receive the same accommodation as a person who is blind, or a person who is hard of hearing, because the person who is hard of hearing might just need to sit at the front of the class. The lecturer will be informed that they would have to speak directly so that that student may read their lip, or use a microphone so that they are able to enunciate so that the student will be able to follow in the class. A student who is deaf might require interpretation services, which we do provide. And so we do look at each unique need. I'll now move into some of the services we provide. This list is not limited. We continue to add, and as I say, we look at each individual need. So one, we provide interpretation services for the deaf or hard of hearing. And we started this provision in, I think, 2016, when we accepted a student who was deaf and she requested this service. You know, we weren't really prepared for this, but in life, there are things that we're not prepared for, but you have to act on it. So this student received her acceptance, not based on her disability, but based on her academic qualification. And the Disability Act does speak to that students should be accepted based on their academic qualification and not be discriminated against because of their disability. We also provide orientation services to new students on the UWI campus. So a person who is physically challenged might need to use a different route to get to classes versus a student who is blind or visually impaired. And so, depending on their faculty, we do provide that type of orientation. We also provide we also act as the mediator between the student and the wider campus population. So we communicate with student services managers, heads of faculty, administrative staff, lecturers, just about every stakeholder on campus on behalf of our students with special needs. And so once a student is registered with our office, each semester, they have to provide their lecturer's name and contact number so that an email can be generated so that an email can be sent to that lecturer informing them of the student and the necessary accommodations for each student. We also provide student volunteers to assist our students in and out of the office space. And so sometimes you might have students going to classes with our student volunteers, assisting students with disabilities to classes, acting as scribes, note takers, assisting them with research, compiling information, just about everything. Our student volunteers are normally taken from our clubs and societies, students that have scholarship hours to complete, and we have a very good working relationship with the University of Technology, where students have 40 hours of community service that they must complete. We also capitalize on the JAMVAT program, just about the high school program, because some of the high schools do require that students complete community service. And so we are so grateful for all that assistance that we don't have to pay for out of pocket, but is readily available. We also communicate with our different departments in terms of relocating classes that are not accessible for students, especially who are physically challenged, to the ground level 4s, and also to ensure that they are fully accessible, where we might, in some cases, we have temporary ramps that we have to erect at some of these locations. It's been a work in progress, but we continue to be grateful for the support that we've been receiving over the years from the different faculties and departments. Academic support. The academic support, we do provide academic support for our students with special needs. The academic support unit also operates out of the Office of Student Services and Development. We provide support for math-based and the language-based courses. So for example, economics, accounts, and our critical reading and writing courses. And once a student requests this service, the academic support unit provides one-on-one tutoring for our students with special needs. And it has been very helpful, especially for our students who are blind and visually impaired, and for students with different learning challenges. Technological support. The Office for Special Student Services, our wonderful facility at the Mona campus, is equipped with computers and software so that students are able to navigate and to research and do their daily and to maximize their daily potential. Our computers are equipped with JAWS, and the JAWS stands for Job Access with Speech. These students are able to navigate using this software to access information, do research, and just about everything, with or without the assistance of volunteers. Examination accommodation. The Office for Special Student Services work closely with the examination section to provide examination accommodations for our students with permanent and temporary disabilities. Our office is equipped with rooms that are very comfortable and provide a one-on-one experience for students during the examination period. We also provide invigilators and scribes to oversee the examination process. Invigilators are vetted by the examination section and must meet the requirement of completing a first degree. Most times these invigilators are taken from the different master's program We also provide computers for students who are comfortable writing their exam, typing their exams. And we also provide additional time for students to complete their examination. Scholarships and grants. Through the Office of Student Financing, scholarships and grants are provided for students with special needs. And so on a yearly basis, we notify the students of the scholarship opportunities through the Office of Student Financing that are available. We have the Keith Peart Scholarship, we have WJC, we also have the Digital Foundation Scholarship. And I would also like to pause here to acknowledge Dr. Floyd Morris, who has taken it on himself to provide a book grant for students of the Faculty of Social Sciences with the highest GPA each year. We also inform students of other scholarship opportunities that are available outside of the university campus, namely the JCPD, that's the Jamaica Council for Persons with Disabilities, Margaret Moody Scholarship that is awarded each year to students with disabilities who are at the tertiary level. The Jamaica Society for the Blind provides the Marlon King Scholarship for students with special needs and the Jamaica Society for the Blind Scholarship. And so those are some of the scholarship opportunities that are available for students accessing tertiary education. If we should look at the Disabilities Act and to see where we are at the Mona campus, we must commend ourselves for one, not discriminating against students with disabilities who would wish to pursue their tertiary degree. And to date, I have not heard, I don't know if it exists, of any student that was denied entry to the university based on their disability. And this was clear, as I said in the example where I gave with the student was deaf and was and received her acceptance to the university and was provided with reasonable accommodation. We also try our best to provide the necessary support needed for the student to maximize their true potential. And where we can't provide the support, we network with other individuals or other organizations that would be able to provide the necessary support for our student with special needs. If we should look at the UWI campus, we must say that we have come a far way in providing accommodations for students with special needs. There's still a lot of work to be done, but we must commend ourselves for being the only tertiary institution in Jamaica to have a facility that caters to the needs of students with special needs. As the audience today is the Western campus, we must say that, yes, we know that we have a lot of work to do in the western side of Jamaica. And so with the implementation of this act and the future looking bright, because most students with special needs prefer to come to the University of the West Indies because of the services we provide, we know that we have a lot to do in terms of extending our services to the Western campus. I must say, during my time of working here, we have students with special needs that were at the Western campus. And when the need arises, we do try, or when we're aware of the need, we do try to assist as best as possible. But I think it needs more than that. We need to actually develop a stronger network and go as far as developing a facility in the Western campus so that students feel comfortable pursuing their degree wherever, whether it's in Kingston or it's in Montego Bay. As I conclude, As I conclude, I must commend the university for the work done so far in allowing our students with special needs to matriculate to this noble institution. Going forward, I would like us to build on this trust so that students with disabilities are able to receive the education needed to live, work, raise family, and do business in Jamaica. Thank you.
Thank you, Shamali, for that interesting, informative, and rich presentation. We will now open the floor for a 15-minute, well, 10 minutes question and answer session, after which we'll go to our next presenter. Go ahead, Miss Sandra Stubbs.
Yes, thank you. So I'm joining the commendations on the many services offered by your department, Mrs. Cardoza. Camera, how you pronounce your surname?
Camera, yes, camera.
Yes. I mean, I heard some of the services I wasn't even aware of, especially those for the temporary special needs, like a heavily pregnant person and so on. Well, you mentioned something that caught my attention, and you ended on a note where at WJC, you want to come up to speed with Mona as closely as possible. You mentioned sometimes providing temporary ramps, and immediately my imagination saw adjustable, portable, mobile ramps on wheels and so on. Is that among the equipment that you have, or I'm sure somebody must have invented it by now? So we'd like to have some at WJC. What can you do for us, so to speak?
All right, we have over the years worked with the Faculty of Humanities, where we had some of these ramps being made. Honestly, I don't know, because it wasn't during my time that they were made, but I'm sure it's a discussion that we would need to have to ensure that, because I know that there are portable ramps, that they do exist, but I think it may cost a lot to get them. But we have persons that we can talk to see how best we can get some of those ramps made, or we might have to get some funding from UWI to ensure that we have these ramps. But I know we can also speak with the Combined Disabilities Association, because they just did a project looking at the electoral system and making it accessible. And I know they did a project looking at portable ramps. So we might just have to have a discussion with them to see how we can, how they came about doing it and what we can get out of something like that.
Thanks for that. Thanks.
Normally,
Yes, Dr.
I think I know that some of those projects were done by different student associations, but the maintenance department it can assist in that regard as well, because I know that they have assisted in building ramps over by the Faculty of Social Sciences as well.
So I think maybe that's where I'm thinking that's maybe where it started in the humanities faculty.
Yeah, that's where.
Right.
Yeah. But as I'm on it, Mrs. Camera, I was thinking in your excellent presentation that we need, because my good friend, Dr. Prendergast, always remind us at faculty board meeting and faculty standing committee meeting that, you know, the Western Jamaica campus is not a standalone facility. It is a part of the University of the West, Mona, operating in Western Jamaica.
Right.
And as such, what services are offered at Mona
Should be offered
is,
at Western campus.
should be available at the Western Jamaica
That's
campus.
true. That's true.
And so one of the things that we have to discuss is how can the services from both the Center for Disability Studies and the OSSS be made available to those students,
in Western campus.
In Western Jamaica campus. And I think we need to share the data so that once Western Jamaica has a student with a disability that is registered there, you know, the information is shared to your office, and then the same privileges that are extended to those students should be extended to those in Western Jamaica. Where we would have a little challenge now is when it comes on to exam time. How do we treat those students?
All right, so Dr. Morris, on that note, once we know of a student with a special need who is at the Mona, who is at the Western campus, the examination services are extended. So we collaborate with the examination section as well as the Western campus, because for example, we had Mr. Garnier and Hazel, who started out in the Western campus. However, he never declared that he had a special need, and because of that, he wasn't granted the services. However, when they found out that he was visually impaired and he needed exams in larger print and needed extended time, they reached out to Mona campus and the services were granted to him. Also, more recently during COVID, we had to organize with the exam section to facilitate, I think 1 or 2 students who had special needs. So the thing is, as we go back to, is the whole thing of sensitization. Let the students at Western campus know that the services are there. We might not be able to immediately provide all of them, but I know for sure that examination accommodations are being made for students there.
And just a personal plug, I must indicate that one of the scholarships that is provided through WJC is actually from a personal contribution from myself and students who are in the Faculty of Social Sciences in the Western Jamaica campus. Once they have a B average, can apply for the scholarship, and those scholarships should be open at this point in time.
If I may, thank you very much, Shirley, for the presentation. But just to make a few added comments, I know where we are. We're challenged in many ways, and it has always been a struggle to get certain things in place. You have already mentioned the sound relationship between the OSSS and the examinations unit, and certainly that has been extended to the Western Jamaica. That collaboration has been extended to the Western Jamaica campus as well. But I will tell you this: one of the things that we have been doing, it is really a pity when somebody doesn't declare, but once the list is generated, one of the things that we have been doing is going ahead of the game to identify where the challenges may exist, so that we can actually prepare for people coming in, not just in relation to exams, but certainly in terms of other areas. Yes. We have been fortunate to not be faced with any particular problems around physical access, because we have had sitting down, and Dr. Morris is right when he says that we continue to remind people of our existence when it comes to certain things. But I think it's just because we've been fortunate to have not been faced with this problem with physical access. why the issue of ramps, for example, that has not been corrected. But that project, overall project for creating proper access in terms of physical access, that has been on the table and in the meeting rooms, and you know, and to be honest, not pursued at this, but up to this point, purely on the grounds that we don't have the funds to do it. But again, that's one of the reasons why we need to have this discussion, because the Disabilities Act coming into full effect,
Yes.
will force us to deal with some of these issues, whether we have financial challenges or not.
And I must say that, you know, at his continued advocacy, insistence, and management, Dr. Patrick Prendergast has consistently insisted that matters relating to Mona campus be extended to Western Jamaica, because we are one.
Yes.
And that is why we are having the training facility here, because when we said we were going to have the training facility, the seminar, him say, make sure that one is set aside for Western Jamaica. And we are here, and commendation to you, Patrick.
Okay, we have a hand in the chat from Indira Ajuda. Am I pronouncing the name correct?
Yes, you are. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the presentations. They've been well so far and has been enlightening and refreshing, as Ms. Stubbs had said. I just wanted to comment or make 2 points as it relates to declaring what we had done here at WJC pre-COVID-19 was in the 2018-19 and 19-20 was to start looking at the admissions data to see if we can identify early where students had disabilities, if they had, you know, declared that on the form, to reach out and to see what arrangements we could within our resources put in place early. I mean, it did turn out that we did not have any real take-up during those 2 years. But as Sharmali had mentioned, there was Ghanaian, and we did everything we could to help him with the exams. And just confirming that as it relates to the exams procedures, we have always had a track record of working with students with disabilities. And as she said, over COVID-19, we had one student sitting about 3 to 4 exams. Yes. And we worked with your office, with the Office of Student Services and Development here, to have writers for that. Actually, it was 2 candidates.
Yes,
So,
I remember that.
Yes. So those are my comments, really, just real comments.
Okay, so I want to thank everyone who posed their comments, feedback, or questions from Sharmali Kamara. We are still not seeing Dr. Samuels. Dr. Samuels, are you with us? Okay, so we'll be moving to what should have been our final presenter, Miss Gloria Goff. Miss Goff, are you with us currently? I'm seeing where you are online. Are you hearing me? Okay, it would appear she fell off the call. Just give me a moment for me to have her rejoin. Hi, good morning again, everyone. Miss Goff is facing a bit of technical challenge, so she has emailed me her presentation and asked that I go through in her absence. So bear with me, participants, while I try to do my best to represent Miss Gloria Goff and what she would have intended her presentation to be today. I may not be her, but I will certainly be doing my best.
Thank you, Chevelle. We appreciate it.
All right, Ms. Goff's presentation is titled Knowledge is Key When Interacting with Persons with Disabilities. The objectives: at the end of this presentation, participants will have a better understanding of interacting with persons with disabilities, be more responsive to persons with disabilities, be more knowledgeable about cited guiding techniques. We will explore the option of traditional thinking as it relates to religion, myths, culture, and self-perception. So, what is a disability? There are different types of disabilities. Difficulties with speech and hearing, difficulties in learning, difficulties with vision, difficulties in moving, and hidden disabilities such as autism and epilepsy. One such disability that I reiterated to earlier is hearing impairment. A hearing impairment, hard of hearing, refers to partial loss of the ability to hear from one or both ears. The level of impairment can be mild, moderate, severe, or profound. Deafness refers to the complete loss of the ability to hear. When interacting with the deaf, there are some clues that we ask persons to follow to be more amenable to this community, such as to take a moment to identify visible clues for communicating with this person, and then find out if the person can speak to you. So never leave anything up to assumption that they are understanding what they're saying or that they can hear you. If you're in a public area with many distractions, consider moving the person to a quiet location, such as a small room, an area where there's less noise or less distractions. Observe the signs used with their fingers, eyes, fists, as sign language is important in communicating with the deaf or someone with a speech impairment. In addition, observe how they indicate yes or no. And use more close-ended questions with this community. Ask questions one at a time. Speak slowly and look at the person so that he or she can easily read your lips. Be very careful of finishing his or her sentences and ask the individual to repeat what they're said and then repeat it aloud. Continuing on this category of disability, get their attentions by clapping, stomping the floor, waving, or asking an oncoming individual to touch them on the arm or shoulder. Do not touch them in the back or their head. Body language and environments count. Eye contact, proper facial expression, lighting, visual is important. With recognition of a hard of hearing student, elevate or project voice. No need to shout, just speak a little louder than you normally would, possibly bring them to the front of the class so that they may hear better. So next we'll be moving into physical impairment. As you can see on the image being displayed, this is a young lady in a wheelchair. It is evident that she currently has a physical impairment or a physical disability. So what is a physical impairment? Physical impairment refers to an individual who has a physical condition that limits her mobility, People with motor impairment may use a wheelchair, cane, or walker or crutches, or have limited mobility in terms of distance. Some of the key points to note: the wheelchair is a part of the user's personal space. Do not lean on it or any other assistive devices such as their canes. If talking with a wheelchair user, place yourself at their eye level by sitting if possible. It is not necessary to stoop. Simply make eye contact and converse with them. Never patronize a wheelchair user by patting them on the head or shoulder. Never push a person's wheelchair without his or her permission. Ensure clear paths of travel for the wheelchair. Offer assistance if the individual appears to be having difficulty opening a door. Maintain the same pace as the person with the physical disability. Offer to shake hand even if the right hand is missing. So we will be moving into blindness or visual impairment. Blindness refers to a visual acuity of 20/200 and worse in the better eye after correction, or a peripheral vision of 15 degrees or less than 10% of what is considered normal. Or simply put, it is the inability to discern images clearly. Visual impairment, limited vision. Visual impairment, limited vision sight that allows a person to operate with the use of a wide cane and less personal assistance. Some key points to note. Upon meeting a blind person, identify yourself. If you have met before, remind him or her of the context, as they won't have the visual clues to jog their memory. For example, you could say, "This is Mary Brown. We met when you were in economics class. I was the one asking the question about cost of living," or something like that, to just jog their memory, as they won't be able to identify that you have black hair, you wear glasses, etc. Speak directly to the individual when you approach him or her. State clearly who you are and speak in a normal tone of voice. Do not disguise your voice or ask them to guess, as this can be frustrating to the individual. When conversing in a group, identify yourself and the person with whom you're speaking. For example, if you are doing a group project and you have a person who is blind or visually impaired, it is best that we all introduce ourselves so they know who is in this space that they're currently in, because without an introduction, they won't know who really is around them, and it will allow the person to also feel safe in the environment that they're in. Describe the activities and surrounding, especially objects, to ensure ease of mobility. Be descriptive when giving direction. For example, if you're approaching steps, how many steps are there? Whether the steps are going up or down. And we'll have some images showing the proper guiding techniques on how you will assist persons with disabilities who are going up a step, going through a door, or coming down a step. Some additional key points. Do not assume that an assistant is a relative or friend. Do not take the blind person's cane. Tell individuals when you are leaving. Ensure that during a lecture that tables, words or numbers are read in conjunction with the rows and columns, especially mathematics-based courses. Be descriptive in terms of graphs and photographs. Know the student by name in order to address him or her during class. Information projected should be read aloud when using a video, and activities are not narrated. Assign someone to sit with a student who is blind to describe same. Be aware that students may not readily include a blind student in group assignments. So as such, you may have to assign the groups when a person with a disability or blindness is in the class. Additional key points. When collecting cash, repeat the amount received. So if you're giving back $1,000 and you're giving them in 2,500, you will repeat, I'm giving you $1,000, there's 2,500s in your hand, or there's 10 100, or is it one $1,000 bill. Similarly, you place the notes together. So if you're giving back 1,500 and 5,100, you'd put the 5,100s together and the 500 by themselves, and let the individual know the 500 is at the bottom, the 3,500, the 5,500, the 5,100s are at the top. Assist the person with completing form and written information. Make contact, introduce yourself, and ask the person to assist and help. So we will move into the correct guiding positions for persons who are blind or has a visual impairment. The person takes hold of your arm just above your elbow, 4 fingers on the inside, thumb on the outside. The grip should be firm. Your arm should be relaxed and close to the side of your body. Remain half a step of the person you are guiding. So this is an example of a sighted guide technique. When guiding a blind person, give brief but clear verbal instructions, mention appropriate hazards, and say if there are steps or curbs up and down. If there's going to be a post, if there is a mailbox in front of the person, you'd want the person to know so that once you go left, they know that you are avoiding a possible hazard. If you have to leave the person you are guiding at any time, let them know and leave them in contact with a solid object such as a wall. So guiding through narrow spaces. You may need to walk single file when moving through crowds or narrow spaces. Put guiding arm behind your back. The person will hold the guiding arm and walk directly behind you, such as the image seen below, seen on the screen. Going through doors. Approach the door with the person you are guiding on the hinge side. Use your guiding arm to open the door. The person with a visual impairment can use their free hand to take the door handle from you and then find the handle on the other side of the door and close it behind you both. Steps. Always approach steps and stairs straight on, not diagonally. Stop and pause when you approach a step or a curb. Inform the individual if the step is higher or lower than normal. And if possible, you can also tell them the number of stairs. For example, we have 5 steps going up, 5 steps going down. Stairs. Tell the person you are approaching the stairs and if it's going up or down. Approach the stairs so that the free hand of the person you are guiding is at the handrail. Always say when you've reached the top or the bottom of the stairs. So there's an example of a blind person and their guide are going down the stairs. So sitting in chairs, grip the back of the chair with the guiding arm so that the person you are guiding can feel where it is. The person can then use your arm to guide them into the seat. If it is a car, place the person's hand on the door handle. If the back of the chair is against a wall, it may be easier to walk towards it in such a way that the person's leg brushes gently against the seat of the chair. Let the person sit down unaided. Never push anyone backwards into the chair. So some general tips when dealing with persons with disability. Decision making, they're very capable of making decisions on their own. Do not demoralize them. Negative comments do hurt, even us as persons without disabilities. Emphasize special allowances may be necessary. not always, but in instances, there will be situation where a special allowance will have to be given with a person with a disability. Recognize it is our right to live a normal life, accessing health, employment, education, and family life. Privacy or issues are ours. Permission should be granted if others are to be told, and information is critical. Finally, respect the person's individuality as a person with a disability. It was a pleasure interacting with you today, the staff of Western Jamaica campus, on how to relate to persons with disability in education and training institution. I hope I did Ms. Goff's presentation justice. So we now open the floor for question and answers, which I will do my best to answer with the assistance of Senator Dr. Floyd Morris. Any questions? I was clear as mud. Okay, I'm seeing where Miss Indira Ajuda raised her hand.
Yes, thank you. It's not a question, it's more a comment. I do think you did justice to the presentation. Just wanted to say that, as well as well, I learned some things from the presentations in terms of how to interact with persons. So I never necessarily thought much about it before. So thank you very much.
Yes, and thank you so much for the feedback.
Yeah, well, the critical issues that one must take into consideration is that persons with disabilities are human beings, and as such, they have a right to exist. And in their existence, you have to treat them with respect. And what this means is that when you are relating with them, you have to speak to them and not individuals that are associated with them. Anybody who reaches the university level is an individual with some intellectual capacity. And you have to relate to them as such. Persons with disabilities are included, and maximum respect is due to these individuals. So, you know, sometimes when I go out with my wife or with my driver, people want to speak to my wife about me, or they want to speak to my driver about me. They want to give them numbers, telephone numbers for me. They want to ask them question about me, what is my name? And from time to time, I have to intervene in the conversation and tell them I am not stupid so they can converse with me.
Or you will say your favorite comment, Dr. Morris. It is my eyes that's blind, not my brain.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It is my eyes that are blind, not my brain. Right? So those are some important things that we have to take note of. And when a person with a disability, you see a person with a disability, don't rush to offer assistance and drag the person all over the place. You know, and carry the person where you think that the person is going or wants to go. Gently ask the person if they are okay, if they need assistance. If they need assistance, they will tell you yeah or nay. And if they say yes, they want assistance, how can I be of assistance? And they will tell you, right? Don't take away the person's white cane. The white cane is the eyes of the blind person. The wheelchair, don't go and lean on the person's wheelchair. The wheelchair is a part of the person's body function. So the person, you don't lean on everybody that you see. So you have to be very conscious of those things when you're relating to persons with different types of disabilities. All right. Any other questions?
Thank you. Thank you very much for the response. Again, mine is not so much a question. Now that I reminded of Floyd's kind of a face to response to people sometimes. You know, I know he insists that I must do my math all over again. So what I will do is just say, some years ago, I had some students call him to do a special presentation, and he apologized for not being able to talk to them at the particular time at which they are called, because he was watching a particular television program that he never wanted to miss. The student came up and said, "Sir, I thought you said he was blind." But what that exercise did really is that it sent the student and her colleague to do a little bit more thinking about this diverse, this varied, this all-inclusive, all-encompassing, actually multifaceted, and as I keep saying, dynamic world of that people with disabilities, persons with disabilities actually live in. And this is some time ago that we started having this conversation around treating people as human beings. And they came back and said, you know, probably we need to have a different kind of discussion. A vision is not just about the ability to see something physically, but also having the insight, having the hindsight, and having the foresight to do something. And I think Floyd may very well remember that kind of introduction. I mean, where we lifted the conversation about his blindness, his lack of a particular part of what we would normally consider as vision, and expanded it into a wider conversation that I'm so happy we're able to be having at the university level at this particular time. And I really and truly just want to once again thank you, Floyd, for your leadership. Thank the team at the CDS, and certainly this is not a vote of thanks, because I know somebody is going to do that, but just to also hope and say thanks to the team from UWI Mona WJC for actually engaging in the session today, because we have to see this as an important part, an important step in the process of change that is required within our university, and seeing it also as us playing our part in making sure that, you know, people have the kind of understanding and appreciation for the world of disabilities. So basically, you know, just to underscore that this is real vision playing out, and we're really very happy that you have found the time to schedule us, and for all of us to have found the time to participate in the process.
Thank you so much for your kind words, Dr. Prendergast, and thank you so much for your comments. we could almost do without the vote of thanks with what you said, but without further ado, we do not have Dr. Samuel presenting today. Unfortunately, we're still unable to get through to him. So, Mr. Morris, would you do the honors of giving the vote of thanks today?
It just means that we are already ahead of the game in scheduling another a follow-up.
No
That's
problem.
Well, I
And it
must tell
means an
you,
early lunch for all involved.
what happens is that we are, all the presenters, we are going to be granting a certificate to all the individuals who have participated in these seminars, but we want the individuals to complete 6 hours. So this would be treated as 3 hours, and the next session would be another 3-hour session to get a certificate of completion in disability inclusive, in understanding how to relate with persons with disabilities, rather. And so I will bring back these individuals. I guess what might be happening, I think,
Samuel is sleeping.
yes, you know, I mean, because Kenya is a couple hours ahead, you know. So I'm sorry about that. Reasonable accommodation is a very important conception, and we would have touched on it, but they would have gone into the legal ramifications of it, because reasonable accommodation is basically looking at what are the necessary measures that you put in place to accommodate and to allow for a person with a disability to participate in society on an equal basis with others. So Shamali would have spoken about the measures for exam. She would have spoken about the technological support that is there at UWI. She would have spoken about the voluntary support that is there for the students. She would have spoken about the registration of the students to get information from them about their disability and learning needs. And then that would be filtered to their lecturers, etc., etc. All of that constitute reasonable accommodation. The sign language interpretation that is provided by the university, those constitute reasonable accommodation, and it's a feature of international law and is manifested in the domestic legislation as well. Failure to provide reasonable accommodation to students with disabilities constitute an act of violation of discrimination, because you are in fact denying or preventing that person with a disability the opportunity to participate in society on an equal basis with others. And so one has to be very clear where that is concerned. But we will have and make sure that the next session that is fully included. So I want to thank the team from Western Jamaica campus for participating and sharing in this very special seminar. I want to thank Dr. Prendergast for coming and leading his team and staying the entire time with us and being a part of the discussion. I want to thank Ms. Cardoza Camera for participating and sharing so well in her presentation. Thanks to Chevelle for sharing the program in her own right and also substituting for Gloria. You know, we have been, that's a part of the challenge of where technology is concerned. You know, you think that it would bridge the gap, but sometimes it creates a vacuum. But thanks to Chevelle, she was able to fill that gap so ably this morning. Thanks to Francesca Lloyd McDavid and Joshua Bell, who offer technical support, and we always appreciate the tremendous support from the faculty, and especially that which is given by Francesca. She has been really a tower of support when I call upon her for any assistance where these initiatives are concerned. Thanks to Shavane and Jason, who give me research support at the Center for Disability Studies. And we want again to thank all the participants and wish you all the best for the rest of the summer holidays, and pray and hope that you will impart the knowledge that you have gathered from this training seminar. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks everyone for participating. It was a very good session with all of you.